She walked into the auction room, her shoes clicking against the polished floor. Everyone turned, but not in admiration. They laughed. It wasn't because of her clothes or her presence, but because of what she had brought with her, an ambition they thought was out of place. A woman clearly out of her element among seasoned collectors and high-powered bidders. They whispered behind her back, certain she was out of her depth. But what if they were wrong? As the auctioneer introduced the next item, a rare, one-of-a-kind piece that had caught the attention of the elite, the room fell silent. The bids started flying high and fast, each one more astonishing than the last. Yet, there she sat, quiet, calm, waiting. Some thought it was a joke, others believed she'd quickly back out, but one glance at her eyes revealed something different. She wasn't intimidated, she was determined. The price reached millions, the atmosphere thick with competition, but then something unexpected happened. Her hand shot up. The room froze. No one had seen it coming. The laughs turned into murmurs of disbelief. Was she serious? She looked around, her gaze steady, as if she knew something they didn't. The auctioneer hesitated, but she didn't waver. Her bid was in. What happened next would shake the entire room. Could this woman, once the subject of ridicule, actually walk away with $1 million item? The answer's coming up. But first, let's see just how far she'll go. As the auctioneer's gavel hovered over the podium, the room held its breath. The rare item up for bid, a piece of history, a flawless antique diamond necklace, was the kind of treasure that had collectors salivating. Its origins were shrouded in mystery, the stories surrounding it enough to drive men to madness and fortune hunters to do anything to possess it. The price had already soared beyond what most could fathom. Yet, there she was, unshaken by the spiraling numbers, her hand still raised high. Her name was Emma, a woman whose quiet demeanor masked a mind sharp as a blade. No one knew her history, her reasons for being there, or why she was so determined to win this particular item. She wasn't a well-known collector. She hadn't walked into the auction with the reputation or the bankroll of the others in the room. The whispers continued behind her back, their snickers becoming louder with every passing minute. Yet, Emma seemed oblivious to their judgments, her focus entirely on the diamond necklace and what it meant. The bidding war had turned into a spectacle. Wealthy men, dripping with arrogance, tried to outdo each other, throwing their wealth around as if it were just numbers on a screen. But there was something different about Emma. Her bid was calculated, measured, as though every dollar mattered more to her than to anyone else in the room. To them, it was just another item to collect. To her, it was something personal, something that tied her to a secret she'd been guarding for years. The auctioneer's voice rang out again, but Emma's eyes never left the prize. There was something unsettling in the way she stared at it, as if the necklace held more than just material value. But what could it be? As the bids continued to climb, so did the uncertainty. Would she really win this? And if she did, what would it mean for everyone else in the room? The room had become a battlefield, with tension thick in the air. The other bidders, once so sure of their victory, were beginning to feel the weight of Emma's quiet resolve. They couldn't quite place it, how someone so out of place, so unassuming, could be challenging them with such intensity. Her calmness was unnerving, her focus unshakable. The auctioneer's gavel hovered again, the price rising higher, yet Emma never flinched, her eyes never strayed from the diamond necklace that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Across the room, Julian, a seasoned collector known for his ruthless bidding tactics, shot her a glance filled with annoyance. He had been in countless auctions, his reputation for driving competitors to their breaking points almost legendary. But something about Emma was different. She wasn't reacting the way he expected. He could see the glimmer of doubt in the other bidders now, the unease that they might not walk away with this prize. But Emma, she wasn't intimidated. Julian knew that she had a secret, something that gave her the courage to stand up to him like this. As the bid reached astronomical figures, a flicker of realization passed through the room. For some, this wasn't just an auction anymore. It was something far more personal. The necklace wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a legacy. And Emma's connection to it. No one knew what it was, but they were beginning to sense that it wasn't just about wealth for her. It was about something much deeper, something rooted in the past, a history that tied her to this moment in a way none of them could understand. Meanwhile, Emma's mind raced. The necklace represented not just her ambition, but her family's legacy, something long buried, forgotten by the world. As each bid climbed, so did the memories, the ones she had tried so hard to bury. What would she be willing to sacrifice to finally take back what was hers? The answer wasn't clear, but her determination was. She wasn't just in this for the win, she was in it to reclaim something that had been lost for decades. But what would the others do when they discovered her true motives? The auctioneer's voice rang out again, a sharp crack through the tense silence. The bid had crossed the $1 million mark, and still, Emma's hand remained steady, her fingers never wavering from the raised position. Around her, the room seemed to pulse with a quiet desperation. Julian clenched his jaw, frustration flickering in his eyes. He was used to winning, used to getting what he wanted, but something about this woman was throwing him off balance. She wasn't intimidated, she wasn't backing down. The other bidders began to murmur amongst themselves, their voices rising in disbelief. How had it come to this? The whispers grew louder, filled with a mixture of envy and concern. Was she really going to walk away with the most coveted item in the room? What was her game? What was she playing at? Emma's presence had shifted the entire atmosphere, and now even the auctioneer was starting to look uncertain. The gavel hovered, the tension in the air so thick it felt suffocating. But then something changed. A voice, sharp and piercing, cut through the chatter. "She's out of her league," Julian said, his words like a challenge. "You're wasting your time." He spoke directly to Emma, his tone dripping with condescension, trying to break her composure. But Emma didn't flinch. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but she couldn't let it show. She wasn't just bidding for the necklace, she was bidding for something far greater. The secrets buried deep within her family's history, the long-lost connection to this piece of history, were now within her reach. She wasn't going to let them take it from her again. The room held its collective breath as the numbers climbed higher, but Emma didn't budge. Her hand shot up once more, this time faster, more resolute than before. The final bid was approaching, but Emma wasn't prepared for what would happen next. No one in the room was. As the auctioneer prepared to call the final bid, the room fell into an eerie stillness, every eye locked on Emma. The price had reached an unbelievable figure, but her hand remained raised, poised, and unwavering. For a brief moment, it seemed as if she might actually win, that the odds were about to flip in her favor. But then, just as the auctioneer was about to strike the gavel, a voice interrupted. Wait, it wasn't Julian's. The room turned to see a tall, sharp-dressed man step forward from the back of the room. His presence immediately commanded attention, his confidence undeniable. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, his eyes fixed on the auctioneer. The man's name was Marcus Blackwood, a name that carried weight in the world of rare antiques and high-stakes bidding. He was known for swooping in at the last moment and stealing away prized items with a ruthless efficiency that had earned him both admiration and fear. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. This wasn't just another bid. This was a move to take control of the auction entirely. "Mr. Blackwood, I believe we're already at the final stages," the auctioneer said, trying to maintain order, but his voice was shaky, unsure in the face of the new threat. Marcus ignored him, walking slowly toward Emma, his gaze never leaving hers. "You've got a lot of nerve," he said, his tone sharp, almost taunting. "You really think you can outbid me?" The challenge hung in the air like a dare. Emma's pulse quickened. She knew who he was, of course. Blackwood wasn't just a collector. He was a powerful man with deep pockets and a history of crushing his competition. But she wasn't afraid. Not now. Not when everything was so close. But then, just as the tension reached its peak, Marcus dropped a bombshell. "You're bidding on something you don't even understand," he said with a sly smile. "This necklace, it's not what you think it is." His words sent a chill through the room, and suddenly, the entire atmosphere shifted. What was he implying? What did he know that they didn't? Emma's heart raced, the stakes now higher than ever before. Emma didn't blink. Her eyes stayed locked on Marcus, even as the weight of his words pressed down like a storm. The necklace wasn't what she thought. Her grip tightened on her bidding paddle, but inside, her thoughts spun. Could he be bluffing? Trying to shake her confidence in the final seconds, she glanced at the item again, its delicate frame shimmering under the lights, the diamond centerpiece catching every glint. She didn't care what secrets Marcus claimed to know. This was hers, and she was ready to fight for it. The auctioneer hesitated, his hand frozen in the air. "Any further bids?" he asked, voice cracking. Marcus raised his hand, calmly, confidently. $1.5 million. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Emma could feel every heartbeat in her chest, but she stood taller. $2 million, she said, her voice loud, steady, final. The room went dead silent. Marcus didn't speak. For once, he looked unsure. After a tense pause, the auctioneer nodded, almost whispering the words, "Sold to bidder 17. The gavel came down, sharp as a gunshot. Emma had won. But the victory felt strange, not empty, but not quite whole. She walked slowly toward the necklace as the crowd parted, still whispering. Then, as she reached the display, Marcus leaned in close and said quietly, "You've just inherited a curse." Emma's heart dropped. He stepped back with a smirk and disappeared into the crowd. Confused but undeterred, she reached for the item. A tiny folded paper slipped from its velvet cushion, aged, yellowed, and marked with a name, her grandmother's. Suddenly, everything made sense. The hidden stories, the silence in her family, the mystery of the necklace. Emma hadn't just bought a $1 million item. She had uncovered a secret buried for generations, and it was only just beginning. Emma stood motionless, the fragile paper trembling in her hands. The handwriting was old but unmistakable, her grandmother's name, followed by a message barely visible beneath the folds. Asterisk. Protect what they tried to erase. The truth lies within. Asterisk. She stared at it, heart pounding, as pieces of a long-lost story began falling into place. This necklace hadn't just belonged to her family. It had been taken from them, hidden away for decades, its history rewritten and sold off as just another luxury item. Back home, she dug into old letters and photographs passed down from her grandmother. The deeper she went, the more the mystery unraveled. Her family had once owned the necklace, passed from generation to generation, until it was stolen during a time of upheaval. With no way to fight back, they'd remained silent until now. Emma had unknowingly stepped into the final chapter of that legacy. But now, with the necklace in her hands and the truth uncovered, she felt something shift. The shame and silence that had haunted her family for years were finally replaced by pride. Julian and Marcus faded into the background, their egos bruised and their plans undone. The world they lived in, driven by greed, status, and power, had underestimated the quiet woman in the corner. Emma hadn't needed money or fame to win. She needed purpose, and she found it. The necklace now sat in a glass case, not to flaunt wealth, but to honor truth. She donated it to a museum with a plaque that told the real story, her family's story. People stopped to read, surprised by the history beneath the diamonds. Emma smiled, knowing her bid wasn't just for a treasure. It was for justice. And finally, that justice had a voice.